thanks God it's Friday. So we only have 2 panels left, and you can go home because you deserve rest. My name is Korab. I was born here, not in the airport. I was born in Rzeszów, and I'm based in New York City right now. I'm a journalist, and for young people, journalist is a person that writes stuff you read on your phone. It's a dying breed, so enjoy what you can. And I want to start with experience I had last week when I was going to this conference. I took a cab, I took Uber to the airport, and we got stuck in traffic. And it's terrible traffic on Friday night in Queens. And we got so bored with the Uber driver, so we actually started to talk. You know, people were talking at some point, like before smartphones. That was fun. And so I asked him about economics of being an Uber driver, and he told me about his life, which was kind of interesting. And then he started to talk about pandemic, which was a big deal in New York City. I mean, in the whole world, but in New York City we had massive problems with that. And I used to have a website. I used to have a health website, so I know one thing or two about health and about viruses. But this driver told me that he thinks, no, he's convinced that the pandemic is basically conspiracy theory created by government and by big pharma, and the COVID vaccine were created basically for Bill Gates to give us microchip. And I asked him, like, how do you know that? And he was deeply offended. He said, I'm not stupid. And I said, I didn't say stupid, I just asked, how do you get this information? And he looked at me and said, no, I read a lot. I read a lot on the internet. And I think everyone from this here had this kind of conversation at some point, maybe more of them. And this is why we're here. This is why we're here to talk about how this information is changing our lives and our societies. And I have a fantastic panel for you. We're supposed to have Mr. Dunda, who unfortunately cannot be with us. He sends his apologies. But we still have a lot of brain power. We have from DC, Washington DC, we have Kateryna Odarchenko, who is head of Institute for Democracy and Development Polita. We have Kamila Wujec from Warsaw via Berlin. Kamila is the regional lead of Humanitarian Leadership Academy at Save the Children. And we have, last but not least, we have Yevhen Popov, head of research and civic partnership at OSAWU. Welcome. Thank you very much. Let's start from Kateryna. Kateryna, it must be ungodly hour in DC. It must be like 5 a.m.
Yes, it's 5:30 a.m. Yes,
Oh, I hope you had
it. It was all 2 weeks of Ukrainian conversation, which is good process. It's good when Ukrainian conversation and at the same time when you have budget conversation. So it's always useful to remind about our needs. So,
thank you for joining us. I hope you had your coffee.
Thank you.
I have a first question for you. Let's start. You wrote Election Game, which is a handbook for politicians in Eastern Europe and Asia. And what are the key takeaways from this book? What can you teach us? What can you tell us about it?
Basically I'm working campaign management, so it's election, and we also create government relations industry in several countries. So the main points in my book, it's how Western type of campaign managers and people who work with elections, who work with political forces, it's fight with the Russian school of political management. What I'm talking about basically is that the Russian school of political management, it's rigging of elections, it's administrative resource, it's disinformation, it's pressure to your opponent, it's bribes to voters, and before Orange Revolution, it also was basic tools which Russians professionals pushed to Ukraine, and the same situation in Kazakhstan, even the same situation in Bulgaria, and some countries which more integrated to European Union. So that's why my main aim of this book, and also like a lot of pre-courses, was to push this Russian type of work and professionals who represent Russian school of political management from Ukraine firstly, and secondly also from countries who try to move from Russian influence. No, I mean also countries from Central Asia, like Kazakhstan, like Kyrgyz Republic, and countries who are already in European Union, but still Russia invests a lot of money to potential pro-Russian political forces. We see that they try to do it in Moldova, and unfortunately they were successful in some period of time in Georgia, and so on and so forth. So first of all, it's these two mindsets. And as you know, it's very important to give the right mindset and the right tool to decision-making persons who, start their career mostly from like political forces and political careers. And now we will talk a lot about polarization. Maybe you saw this polarization also yesterday in a conference here in DC. So it's also not good thing, and I hope I can also share with you some points from last sociological research, and we can think how to fight this polarization and Russian impact together.
Please do.
Yeah. So if we're talking also about feeling of Ukraine today, we also we'll also talk about trust. So, and for me, it's a very big issue that today trust to president. I now apply to sociological research of a rating group, and also of Razumkov's Center. Maybe people who work in Ukraine very familiar with this sociological research. They mostly now funded with American institutional donors. So it's interesting that president for now have support like 43% plus 10%. So it's I'm a trust to him, and I'm most likely to trust to him. But much different to Verkhovna Rada, it's like 28% and 37%. And if we talk about government, it's 44% plus 16%. So we see that level of trust in our country, even in the period of war, it's not so high. So people still don't trust to some government structures, and people not trust at all to judge systems. They not trust at all to people who work, in, for example, secret services and so on and so forth. And I see the same trend in countries where Russia worked before, in Moldova, in Georgia, even in Bulgaria, where it's like 5-time elections and they can't form coalitions. So that's why I guess that like the level of trust, it's one of the main points which we need to monitor in also Ukrainian society. And when we will have big level of trust to not only to volunteers, not only to Ukrainian armed force, which like level of trust is extremely high, and also we will have high level of trust to parliament, to government. It's will be good indicator that Ukraine moving to the right things. And the same in United States. So I was very surprised when here in George Washington University was presentation of one of the main pollsters in United States, and they show that level of trust also going down here. I mean, level of trust to Congress, to American Parliament. So as you can see, when this level of trust is moving down, country face polarization and country face problem, and it's very easy to use misinformation and disinformation campaign when it's no trust. So I think that that taxi driver which you talking with, he also have low level of trust to government and low level of trust to police, maybe to secret services. That's why he said that, oh, it's all conspiration theory. And with new tools like social media, like internet, like working with traffic, like troll campaigns, Russia used this low level of trust to push their political forces, like they did in, for example, my native region, it's Kherson region in southern Ukraine, which now suffer from full-scale invasion. Also they push their ideas, through some influencers and fake opinion leaders. So that's why if we want to fight Russian misinformation, Russian influence, and I hope that we all work on that, we must work also on level of trust in society and, maybe also like new form of very, very stable social agreements. I think that Ukraine have a very good chance to do that after our win, obviously.
I cannot agree more. Once we talk about misinformation trust, I'll ask Yevhen, you work a lot with, and you focus on this in your work. And what kind of misinformation did you see in your work?
Thank you for this question and thank you for the invitation. So I will try from practical side and will try to be as practical as it can be. So first I will tell what is ASAVU, because we like a company which emerged like after the invasion, and we IT guys, like mostly of our company is IT, who develop the tools to fight disinformation, misinformation, narratives and informational attacks. We start to do it because our friends who are in the front line right now start to ask us what to do with this, how we can be more effective, because we see that it's some attacks going on, and it's a lot of them, and it's thousands of them a month, a day, a week, and some of them can be identified when it become public, some of them not. So we started to develop some tools which like pretty helpful to fight against disinformation, misinformation, narratives and attacks, and all things related to that. Backing to your question, I will like generalize as possible, but also will provide some examples. I guess what the biggest problems for me is like three biggest problems with misinformation right now and disinformation right now and informational attacks. First of all, it's very easy to produce disinformation right now. It's cheap, it's take nothing. You can easily
hello ChatGPT, right?
You can easily launch, for example, ChatGPT-4 language model focused on specific region, focused on specific language with specific words which only people from this region have. For example, if we compare, for example, like, I don't know, Spanish in Chile and Spanish in Spain, it will be two different kind of Spanish because the people using some specific words. And you can easily train the model to be specifically on this in this country. The same with Ukraine. We also have different language in Ukraine in different regions, so you can easily train the model. The same with photos and videos. Unfortunately, it's very easy to produce fake content and use it in disinformational needs with usage of voice, video, photo, and something like that. The funny moment of that, for example, now exists AI which will translate the memes from internet on English. and then you have the same voice, and it's very funny when you have like the old meme and funny video from past time, like 20 years, and the AI is translated in English and give the same intonation and something like that. However, it's widely used in the disinformational field, so it's very cheap to produce. It's nothing for organizations who want to use it and states who want to use it to launch it, and it's not hard these days. The second one is that disinformation nowadays and misinformation is always not, how would say, not focused on facts, but mostly focused on emotions, and people do not really control the emotions, and it's really support the whole field of discussion. Because, and maybe I will talk about this later, but mostly the fact checkers, disinformation experts, they mostly focused on facts, but unfortunately people can believe in different facts. They can compare or put it in a logical model in different with different components, and will believe in some facts. They will believe in some facts. They will not believe. So I guess it's a second problem which appears right now. So it's based on fact. It's based on emotions, not facts itself, but it's partially used facts. And third one, that disinformation not spread it into different, I would say, different messages. It's spread it by narratives, and we use this terminology narrative because this narrative can be supported by, I don't know, different news, different piece of content, different piece of information, and reflecting the panel which was previous to this about disinformation. I guess the main thing, the main struggle that, for example, different piece of content can be spread through different social networks. For example, in TikTok you will have song, in Instagram you will have photo, in Facebook you will have text, and in news outlet you will have like experts who support this thing. And the people, especially in Russia, they will believe it because they receive the whole piece which support the whole narrative from different types of content. And this, it's a problem of nowadays. So we can somehow fight against this, and we can do something against this, but it's like it's a big responsibility, but I guess we will talk about this later. But with these examples, I'm already told that it's like GPT-4, face technologies, video information, we type content, and actually the ways of it spread. So it's different type of content for different networks, which is hardly to identify itself.
I have more questions for you about how to fight with this, but I'll come back to you with this. I like what you said about emotions, because when you think about social media, the currency of social media, the currency of Facebook and others is engagement, right? The more engaging posts, the more people are watching, and it's more shared, it gets more viral. And it's nothing more engaging than fear and anger. That's why the posts that makes us angry are going viral and elevated by robots, by algorithms. And this is why we cannot agree on anything, not only on COVID, on elections. We agree that we disagree, as you said, Kateryna. But we will talk about it more. I have a question for Kamila. You work with, as a coach, you work with humanitarians. What are the key points they have? What is it you see on the field?
You mean in terms of challenges, or in terms of media communications, or
Challenges? Yes, let's start with challenges.
Yeah. Okay, so when we work with humanitarian sector, we either work in the development field or in the response emergency setting. And so currently we are in the Ukraine response setting. And what we see is that the humanitarian responders are basically, I think I want to pick up on two things that both of you have mentioned, and I just want to follow up. So basically, they needed a lot of trust to deliver the humanitarian response, and we have seen the whole networks created were built on trust and partnership and collaboration. That's why the response in the first phase was like very, very successful to delivering aid. And there was another point that I just missed, but I will come back to it.
How do you build this trust? And do you see that you have less trust recently because of the misinformation?
I wouldn't say we have less trust. I would just say trust takes effort, and trust takes also authenticity and responsibility to be genuinely clear in one's message, and also quite consequent in one's message. And I think for us humanitarians it's a specific responsibility to be in our communication very, very clear, and also double check the informations, because when we act in a response setting, everything goes very speedy, everything goes very quick, and that's the point where I wanted to pick on the emotions. We are exposed to emotions, we are very vulnerable, we want to help as soon as possible, but at the same time emotionally driven. That's one of the things we can sort of capitalize on that, but then we have a special responsibility of really then not to lose focus and not to lose mind. But Alek, you were asking me about the challenges of the humanitarians, and I think there are many of them connected to communication, not from a point of view of IT or the new technologies, but in terms of communication as a humanistic, linguistic sort of model, as a peer-to-peer communication, human to human. And one of the things that I want to mention is that humanitarians deal with a whole level of complexity, and that's one of the biggest challenges, the complexity that is connected to, well, first of all, the exposure to emotional, sort of very difficult situations that they operate in, but then also to the challenges of having, a completely new setting, many different things to learn, many different things to consider, being approached by many different actors, and then we have to keep into consideration also that many of our humanitarian responders, they have been smaller organizations and they have grown very rapidly. So when we think about humanitarian organizations, like people who, some of them were in charge, like officially authorized legal representatives of their organizations, but their followership was then mostly volunteer-based, the responsibility to take care of all the things were very accumulated within a group of small people, whilst the response was carried by a large group of people. The responsibility and the burden and actually the cost was on the shoulders of only a few. So what we're trying to do as the Humanitarian Leadership Academy is we're trying to support the responders. Of course, as Save the Children, our primary task is to save all children. But then we acknowledge that we have a special role to play in helping the responders, in building, in empowering them to continue the work that they are doing. And we do that in many different ways, and communication is definitely a very, very important thing that we consider on many, many different levels. But how we see things is that we are trying to stay in relation with the individual. We try to empower the individual responder because it's very important. Otherwise, people are exposed to burnout, to just simply being overloaded. But then equally, we're trying also to empower organizations in their structures, in their challenges that they face, in growing and upskilling, in recruiting new staff that is able to help them to deliver the response that they're doing. But then also we try to not lose out of sight the collective, which is the sector as a whole, and we also engage in communications around, are we doing the right thing? Are we doing it in the right way? And this is something that we do. Well, you might like it. It's very data-driven. We collect our data and evidence, and we do a lot of research, so we know that we have actually evidence for what we are doing is the right thing, or it was effective, or it could have been more effective. So we don't guesstimate, but we are clear actually on our reporting. But that's not all. That's not enough. Equally, we have to engage also in narratives and in dialogue and in thinking, in thought leadership, and exchanging, also in challenging our own views. Are the things that we're doing for decades, is it still valid? Today we are speaking sometimes about the precarious interdependent times and multi-crisis happening at the same time, and the need resulting out of it to be responsive, not in a way of of only limited to an emotional sort of response. But that's needed too sometimes, right? When we, for instance, when we issue an appeal for funding, we need to save the children right now because they're suffering, because the crisis has happened, and we need to act right now, not tomorrow, not the day after tomorrow. So there are different communicates and different levels of communication and engaging. Yeah, and as I said, engaging with the individual, engaging with the group or a structured organization, but then also in the wider societal dialogue. And I think we're trying to take up this role and this task to support our leaders to prepare for and respond to crisis.
Okay. Let's go back to DC. And you're Ukrainian living in Washington, DC, and we have elections coming, right? In Ukraine, in America, and also in Poland. What kind of challenges do you see as a researcher, as a human being, ahead of these elections? Do you see any pain points that's similar, or maybe some differences?
Yeah, it's an important question. You know, all processes are very different in different countries because of level of democracy development, so on and so forth. But it's also pretty the same. So what I mean, we saw polarization on American election. No, I mean when it was Movement March. You remember that period, and we also saw polarization in Ukraine, polarization in Poland. Now you also see this, you know, polarized discussion even about Ukrainian grain. And it happened because it's very easy for any campaign manager to use message which polarize society. So it's very easy point. When you polarize society, you easily get like 5, 10, 15 points on your issue, because it's pretty easy to say that your opponent is completely, I don't know, people with completely right or completely left idea. But I also see some issues which are very unique for Ukraine and potential Ukrainian elections. As you know, now it's big couloir discussion about this potential election in March next year. So it's obviously check and balances which we need to work on in Ukraine. It was big discussion about social agreement, about maybe less opportunity of any power to do a pressure to opposition. So check and balances is very important, I think, for the next 30 years for Ukraine. Also, I guess that second challenge for Ukraine, it's a challenge to build transparent dialogue between civil society, business, and government. So, I mean, it's anti-corruption programs, I mean, it's voting for law about lobbying. I mean that it's also educational work, because when we also see level of trust, and I post all these reports which I analyze on social media, so you can go and analyze it together with me. But it's interesting that people in Ukraine, for example, trust volunteers, but they trust much less to non-profits and organization of third sector. So it showed to us that people still don't understand that originally volunteers, it's also part of third sector. So obviously we need to do more work in this vector, because transparent democracies, liberal democracies, they have more participation, not only in first response, like humanitarian response, but also in different structures of civil society, which we're talking today about originally. So also we must work a lot on information hygiene. So in every country, and now rigging on elections and Russian influence, it's a question not only in Ukraine, because Russia obviously trying to do that with different methods, but also in Africa, but also in Central Asia, but also if we talk about Middle East, and if we talk about United States elections, because sometimes I don't know if people do it in consciousness or I don't know, maybe because they like to polarize, but sometimes directly top American politicians use Russian narrative in their, top interview, which followed by hundreds of millions of Americans. So obviously, if we talk about information hygiene, we must talk about quality journalism, which you mentioned in your first point, not about news in internet or even news in social media, because every algorithm it can be hacked, and unfortunately Russians and even Northern Koreans have good groups who can work with that, unfortunately. And also challenge which I want to conclude, it's a challenge of institutional building in Ukraine, because when I look on research about refugees and why refugees want or don't want to go home, it's also about institutions. So, and it's connected with check and balances, it's connected with anti-corruption, it's connected with additional resources to education and medical support, and so on and so forth. So that's why for us it's a unique situation to build strong institutions which obviously connect with economic growth, because with strong institutions also investors will come to Ukraine, also it will be transparent type of rebuilding of our country, and people it's more than 70% of people said that no, we don't want to live in Europe or in the United States or wherever, we want to come back. 30% said that no, we want to stay in those countries. So, but for this 70%, it's important to see, to have a work, to have transparent government, to also form, Ukrainian national idea, and to build European country. And it's a unique situation and unique opportunity to finally build this Ukrainian Ukrainian dream, and I hope we will build it together. Yeah.
I cannot agree more. I like what you say about economy. Like one of the surveys, the studies that really turned out stuck in my head was about people who stormed Capitol on January 6th. Most of them, a lot of them, were in debt. They didn't feel stable economically. So once you are in debt, it's much easier to believe that someone is really behind all your problems. And just one simple solution. We talked about it yesterday with Kamila. So yeah, that's very important. And when you think about people who storm Capitol, right, they all believe they are saving democracy. They deeply believe they are doing good work. And someone put that to their minds, And now they get 10, 15 years in jail for that, and they're in shock. How can you save democracy and end up being in jail? So that leads us to another question to Yevhen. Yevhen called himself a tech person, but I have a secret he doesn't want you to know. He's a doctor. He has PhD. Yeah, this is what happens when you tell secret stuff to journalists. Yeah, how you learn your lesson. And Yevhen has a lot of very interesting thoughts on technology and media. And okay, let's address the elephant in the room, right? Okay, I'll do a joke, like old Soviet joke. When Soviet teacher asked students to write an essay titled, "Who is your biggest hero and why it's Lenin?" So, Yevhen, what is the biggest threat to misinformation and why it's artificial intelligence? Why it's ChatGPT?
Can the answer be Lenin also? I don't see ChatGPT like a biggest threat, because
I meant like a what you mentioned before, like automation of creating content.
Yeah, I'm going to this, but like in general, it's not about production of the content, the digital information. It's not about production of the content. It's about how the information spread. So if like 5 or 7 years ago or 10 years ago, there was a phenomenon called likeonomics. Like when you like, people see it and then they like it again, and social network works. And it's still in some social networks. It's still there, but the content itself become more personalized. So if you open the social network and you see the resource which you don't trust, like a user, you probably will not react on this. You just scroll. And so somehow the situation not so bad in general. However, returning to the main question about NGOs and what the biggest thing, I guess one of them, and like I will speak like from my heart because I used to work in NGO sector for 10 years, and I guess the biggest threat here is technology adaptation by NGOs, fact checkers, journalists itself, because from one side we, like NGO, we can say that yeah, the world developing, but we also need to use technology. We also need to engage in this. We also need to use it in some ways, and that's why actually why we start ASAVU and what we are doing there to make this process easier. So, for example, we have a platform, one of our tools. We have a platform which like our main tool, and there you can see the narratives which spread it in many social networks, including messaging, including chats, including photo, videos, and something like that. So for user side, it's not so hard to understand how to use it and fact check or understand where the disinformation goes. Because, for example, once in a while in Ukraine, everybody start to write that, for example, somebody stealing humanitarian aid in Ukraine. And when we check from our source, we can see that this piece of content was created by Russia account in Russia. It was spread in Russia network for months, and then somehow some Ukrainian took it and put it in Ukrainian segment. So we can follow it, and it take like minutes for you as a users to understand it. So yeah, the technology behind this is our development, but for user side you can easily understand it. The second thing, and it's like more important, and we speak here a lot about collaboration and something like that. And I guess the collaboration itself need to be more technological also. Because what I can observe right now, it's a lot of fantastic people in fact checkers. It's a lot of fantastic people who say that disinformation is a huge threat. It's a lot of people who work as journalists, as disinformation centers, a lot of government agencies, a lot of semi-government agencies. So a lot of fantastic people who doing a great job. But in outcome, it's almost nothing. We always tell, oh, it's a problem. It's still the same, it's still on the table, the same problems. And I guess, like, what the main thing here, that, for example, it was a big surprise for me that, for example, right now, there is no mechanism to spread information and data itself securely between different institutions of different types. Because intelligence agency, government agency, NGOs, fact checkers, they use different type of information inside the organization. And what we are doing also in ASAVU, in this case, we have also the system which reports to each organization of different types the threat from other different agencies. We put the credibility that it's founded by these fact checkers, the threat is there, and this information is spread in many institutions, including the intelligence, including government, and they can react in their way, because like we can advise, I don't know, some government agency, you need to do this, to do this, to do this, but if we look on a way how it's spread before, so how it usually works, some organization, they make research, the information attacks appears, they make research, it takes some time, for example, like 1 month, then they bring into one institution and they say, oh, please react, but it was like 1 month ago. Even if it was like 1 week ago, it's like it's very long time for nowadays. It's like for this period of time, it can happen a lot of things. So in general, we make this process in a minute. So from one side, if you're willing to collaborate, yeah, it's other thing. And like for example, the other responsibility is technological way of this, because they take in the data, for example, NATO and Ukrainian government, they take in absolutely different information and different type of content. For example, colleagues for NATO using our platform, they do not use platform, but they took in our data itself. So I guess this is like a main thing. If you willing to collaborate, you need like some instrument. It's also invitation. If you want to join, please do it, because like we open in this because we see that informational attacks on Ukraine, it's going not only for Russia-Ukrainian relationship, but also for like, you know, from different countries, different source and different networks, and it's like it's really huge threat issues, and for example, different agencies and on different levels, even the same agency react on the disinformation attack in different ways. So we just need to understand that we all have like also fact checkers, journalists, NGO workers. We have own sector of responsibility, but some piece of information or some actions can't be taken by us. So somebody else should take it. So the collaboration is all actually an answer. So, but it's in a global way all this term.
I really like this idea of this detective, right? And it's kind of detective that sources the source of the disinformation. I think I love this tool. We were talking about this yesterday, and I can't wait to test it. And you know, and another that you mentioned that you build a platform to share the data collectively. By the way, we will ask you questions at the end of the panel. So if you have questions, thoughts, prepare, and we want to hear more from you, from audience. Moving on, Kamila. We also talked yesterday, and you actually mentioned that you use a little bit of AI in your work, and it can help you. So, what kind of technology are you using when you work with humanitarians on the field? What's useful?
Many things. And this will be a long speech because there are many things. But before I go into that, I want to share a reflection that is connected to what you shared with us, which is, you called it elegantly the detective, but actually it's also connected to critical thinking, right? Like we can have our tools and we have sort of, and we need them definitely to verify on a large global scale, but that doesn't take away from us, you know, working on our critical thinking skills, and that links again to, I think, what I tried to share in my in my first sort of response, saying that when people have to deal with a whole range of complexity and they feel easily overwhelmed, critical thinking and setting boundaries, either by myself or by peers or supporters, is just like really a very, very critical fact. But back to the question. Yeah, AI definitely is coming. It's of course it's there. It's also it's in the humanitarian sector. It's and we notice it and we acknowledge it. But that's not the only thing. And speaking about tools and about the ways we work, I think there are different functions which I want to start from. So first of all, as I have said, we're working with the individual leader, with the organization and the sector, and we use very different sort of media channels and ways and narratives and storytelling tools and all the broad range of it for very different purposes. Now, one of the things that we are trying to do is we try to use our reach and the spread that is very fast-paced for the good of the other people. So one of the things that we have been doing in the Ukraine response, but also in other responses that happened ever since, in the Turkey earthquake, right now in Morocco, is setting up a platform that is called the Response Learning Hub, where we immediately within hours collect the relevant learning, digital learning content for the first-line responders. So we are trying to immediately act and deliver something like share our expertise, share our knowledge to those who might need it immediately. Now this is in so far very relevant as, for instance, Ukrainian men usually cannot attend our trainings face-to-face happening in Poland, so they are completely cut off and sort of excluded from what is happening, which has then long-term effects even on, you know, on the sort of gender balance within the sector, etc., etc. So this is how we see our responsibility to not only create content that is accessible for everyone, also those who are unable to travel at the moment or who have difficulties in reaching, because that's how we can benefit in the modern world, right? But we also try to invest in, we did a huge investment into translations, into local languages, because we don't want English to be a barrier. So basically, yeah, so the platform is one of the things, and sharing actually the humanitarian technical expertise that is very specific and very high level in our organization. But then there is the other function, which is basically engaging with the learners, with the people on the ground. One of the basic things is expressing your sorrow and your feelings for the people who have suffered. And so that's one of the things that I'm always moved when I read them. It's just like such a small gesture, right? Like we feel for the people who have suffered or who have lost their loved ones. Yeah, but this is like a personal one. But from an organizational point of view, engaging with the people is a commitment, and it's hard work of many. But also but then the learning and the value added is really also very big. So what we can share is that we have one of the biggest e-learning platforms. Well, in the humanitarian, it's the biggest. It's called Kaya Learning, where we have over 500 courses. We have a huge followership on social media.
How big?
I think it's more than 1 million followers at the moment,
wow.
which is really huge and quite an achievement. But as I said, work for many years of really hard, sort of authentic and committed work of many people. But it is appreciated, and the fact that we have such a big followership is also sort of speaking something, because it's not a fancy marketing product. It's coming from an emergent need, sort of, right? Then we have a huge newsletter followership, and we are committed to inform actually the people what we are doing, in order to invite them, in order to inform them about the upcoming training offerings that we have. Ultimately, what we are doing is not for ourselves. It's about, delivering the aid, delivering the expertise to the people that might need it. So we can only achieve that when we speak about it, when we spread it, and when we have people who help us with doing that. So that's, then we have, then there's the other function, which we are very proud of, is basically highlighting not only our own sort of offering and what we are creating, what we think is helpful and needed in the current crisis, but also we're very proud to present our learner stories, our learner successes, and share also the achievements, reports, things that have emerged in the responses and humanitarian settings from our partners, because we're very delighted actually to share what others are doing, and we believe in the power of partnership, collaboration, and amplification as well. Last but not least, we engage in dialogues, and also started not quite so long ago like a podcast series, and we use this platform for highlighting thought exchange and the thought leadership of people who are frontline responders, or who have a specific expertise in something, and we think that their thoughts might be valuable. So if you all have something that you find very valuable and you feel the world needs to hear and see it, because it might help other humanitarians, then definitely Kaya and all the other platforms are the right place to share it with the world. Last but not least, we are engaging in quite innovative ways of thinking and presenting not only organizational identity, but digital identity. For instance, we are planning in the next year the Humanitarian Exchange Congress, which is designed to actually showcase how organizations in a very, very innovative way use their tools to create a digital identity, to provide credibility, to create a good profile, and ultimately to receive the funds that we all need to deliver life-saving aid. I'm thinking what else I wanted to say. Yeah, it definitely is a commitment. We are sharing content daily in very different ways, but we also encourage actually So one of the things that we're trying to do in the pathway of upskilling and empowering leaders is to encourage them to not be shy. Some people have hesitations like, oh, they perhaps wouldn't, they don't like their social media presence, or they feel like they are not a public figure, why should they? So we're saying, no, actually you have to do it. You have to tell the world what you're doing, because otherwise you will just simply get lost. And ultimately, all these platforms are also tools to advocate for those whom we are ultimately working for, right? So we're trying to encourage those leaders to really take up all the benefits that we have, all the tools that we have at hand. And you said it's so easy, like it's accessible to everyone. It's like, of course, we spoke about it in this disadvantages way, right? Like it has threats and risks to it, and it's good to be aware about it. But equally, for low resource organizations, pop-up organizations, informal groups, in like community-based groups that are not institutionalized, that perhaps do not have fundings or like proper organized channels. It's like also a resource to just shout out to the world. And basically this is what we did, right? In the early days of the response, we just created WhatsApp groups, and we created Facebook posts, and we were very just we weren't focused on our ego, but rather on the ecosystem that we can enable through the message. And I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, lack of ego, that's a good point. I have a couple of points I want to reach, because you said so many interesting things. But first things first, I want to say to ChatGPT, I'm sorry for comparing you to Lenin. If you will be our future overlord, please forget that and don't steal my job. Secondly, you mentioned newsletter. I as a journalist, it's incredible how effective is this tool, emails. Emails, it's a technology that has like 40 years, and people still are reading emails. It's still very, very, very good platform to share your content and to talk to people. And finally, what you said in the beginning about critical thinking, I think this is very, very important. When I lived in England, in London, I realized that the children in British schools, they learn how to evaluate the information they have. This is basically a topic in school. Like when I was a kid, we had a topic on how to prepare yourself on a nuclear attack, which was kind of important. When you saw Oppenheimer, it's not a nice thing to be hit by a nuclear bomb. So they were teaching us this, and I think it would be very, very good if the kids these days can learn how to spot misinformation, how to judge who created, maybe use a detective from Yevhen. So we can talk a little bit more, because I want to ask you about practical things, and I know you have more ideas. But coming back to Kateryna, last week we have a UN summit in New York City, which is a pain for every New Yorker. We absolutely hated that the city is in traffic, and which is terrible. Anyway, but President Zelensky was there, and he was talking to media about the corruption scandal he had, and I thought he played it perfectly. He was open, he wasn't shy. He was talking, he was answering the question, and he didn't escape. I think he played it perfectly. I'm saying this as me, as a journalist. I'm not a researcher, I didn't see the survey. But I was impressed. I know the journalists that were interviewing him were impressed. So my question to you, Kateryna, is, like, what are the best practices to deal with transparency and crisis and things like that? What you can tell us?
First of all, I think we must be clear that Ukraine still suffers from Soviet Union influence. So originally corruption, it's not practice of Western world and liberal democracies. It's practices which unfortunately some people who have bad governance practice take from Soviet Union, because what Soviet Union said to you that if you like high official, you can have more, and like that stole something from manufacturing, it's okay, and that person who on high level can oppress people who like on other levels. So it's all, I think, bad heritage of Soviet Union, and unfortunately, Ukraine still have some problems with institution building, with ethical issues, and with forming this, political elites which will be complex, transparent. So that's why I think we must talk about it clearly. Ukraine is a huge country, so it's like biggest country in Europe because we are Europe, and of course from like almost 40 million people, sometimes we have people in local government or in government business structures who try to do corruption. But and Russia take these messages and try to use them in disinformation. But one more issue: let's remember United States 200 years ago. Is it was ideal governance? It was ideal economical policy? No, it wasn't ideal. Even if we thought about women's rights, even we thought about canceling of segregation, it wasn't ideal system. So that's why Ukraine moving in huge dynamic to this democracy development. My father like taken part and was co-organizer of Orange Revolution in Kherson region. So I saw how brave people, even then in 2000, said to Russians that no, we don't want to live more in kleptocratic Soviet Union system. And you can see what is the result of like communist ideology. You can see North Korea and other countries. So that's why I guess that if we talk about Ukrainian leadership in the United Nations and about Ukrainian leadership as a model now, it's pretty good model to show other societies, and it's pretty good model to show resistance and to show how we form this Ukrainian national idea, and to show that Ukraine, it's not one leader, it's not two leaders. Ukraine is multi-leadership country. So the highest level of trust, it's even not to, so Zelensky have high level of trust, but the biggest level of trust is have Ukrainian army in our society and Ukrainian volunteers. So I think that it's the main point and the main, basic for our democracy development and on fighting against disinformation, that we trusted each other and that we can co-organize one times. We organized on the Orange Revolution, we organized on Revolution on Dignity, we organized as first responder to annexion of Crimea and annexion of part of Donetsk and Lugansk region. We now have first response and have resistance to Russia. So it's pretty good messages. And when we all talking about disinformation and about polarization, unfortunately these tools work also for people who start from economy situation. And you remember Hitler's idea also wasn't idea which supported in the perfect economical situation. It was like good economical situation, right? And you see a result. The same we see in countries where autocrats have power. Even China, mostly people even not very good situation. That's why like autocratic regime is still supported. So if we will more educate people, if we will more educate also decision-making person, we will fight with Russian disinformation. As my opinion, it's not so important where a person read this disinformation. Before, you remember it was big discussion that radio will change the world and it's like great tool of disinformation. And Nazis use radio as, this tool. Then it was discussion that TV will change this information. But as my point of view as political manager and communication expert, that it's only tool. But messages is the same. So what Russians said, they take classical archetype and classical scenario of apocalypse, and they use it that, in Ukraine they have biolab. but it's biblical, basic, and it's biblical archetype, so nothing new. Tools a little bit different. But if we will educate ourselves, educate our friends, our community, educate international community, and will be free and fair and transparent, we can be effective. And about additional tool I explained to you. So it's democracy development, it's institutional development, it's voting for lobbying laws, so it's transparent advocacy, and obviously the support of all Western partners. And thank you one more time to all people in the audience who support Ukrainian nation wherever and how you do it. It's not important, is it sharing of Ukrainian articles, or it's donation, or it's voluntary work, or it's support of politicians who support Ukraine. It's pretty important. So, because if you support Ukraine and you support Ukrainians, your politicians will support Ukrainians. So it's basic rule, which is very important to understand, because now Poland also face election and the United States also face election. Thank you so much for your work. Thank you.
Thank you. I like what you said about the Ukrainian army that holds the biggest support and trust. Like I like what Americans do when they see an army person, they say thank you for your service always, and it's very kind. And when we think about in the U.S. and I know in Poland as well, we think about Ukrainian soldiers, they're just icon of trust and bravery. So that's amazing. I want to say this, and very impressive example for the whole world. Also, you mentioned America 200 years ago, and I just read a book about George Washington, so I cannot help myself. And he had some problems with corruption in his army, and he dealt with this immediately. And he was very honest, and he didn't tolerate anything. He was talking about it. Also, what I learned, he had a terrible mother. It was embarrassing. He had an embarrassing mother. That's probably he spent so much time in war. That's a lesson for all of us. No one's perfect. But moving on, Yevhen, let's talk about what practical things we can do. What practical advice do you have for journalists, for citizens, for politicians, to stay informed, to know the truth, and to separate the misinformation from the truth?
Very philosophical question, if you take the practicalities. But I guess when we speak about disinformation and misinformation, we don't speak about truth. It's a little bit hard to understand, but unfortunately, it's about trust, and unfortunately, what now Ukraine shows, to the whole world, that information is other kind of attack, and when the people dying, it's not about truth. It's totally a weapon. When the information bring a conflict inside the society, inside the cooperation between different institutions, different countries, it's not about truth, unfortunately. And this is first what we need to know and to understand, that we can't say that, we want to find truth, or we want to understand what's going on, but if it's used against us and it's making conflict, it's me as a professional in different spheres, I can't tell nobody what is truth for him, because it's some kind of philosophical question about what truth in modern world itself, and it depends, from various factors, from religion and which religion you believe to who you're voting for and something like that. So mostly, I guess, first thing what we need to do. The second one, I'm already told that we need to be more technological one, and we need to be more aware about what's really going on. Because right now, as I said, the information is like a weapon. It's like another thing how Russia attacks Ukraine, or Russia attacks other countries. And for example, when I speak to my colleagues from abroad, from different countries, and from experts in disinformation, we talking always about they analyzing media, but they're analyzing media, for example, in their own language, in their own country, or in other things. However, as my perspective shows that for sure the disinformation spread in their country, but not native language. Most maybe by Russian language, in Russian language, in Russia groups, in the Polish chats, on US chats, or in other things. And it's also the asymmetry with which people need to understand that somehow our technological advantage or technological capacity gives us a certain mindset. We can't like use all technologies which was developed like 10 years ago to understand what's going on. Because like for example, as we already said, with ChatGPT, it's like it's a minute to create a large language model, to create the specific messages. It will be written in different words, it will have different accounts, and it's spread in a minute, 1,000 comments. It's not difficult, it can be done very easily, and for example, any media can receive 1,000 comments in some news, and it will be bots which will write different messages, different things, but it will be the same narrative. It will be even not spread the same words. So it's already happened in Ukraine every day. So it's already there. It's not something which it's not some concept which will be developed. It's already exists. So from our perspective, we can identify that. We can identify the bots. We can identify the agents which will spread it, who stand behind the information. However, I guess, as I told, is this understanding of needness of collaboration. So if the organization understands that we need to collaborate, so let's find solutions. So like we, like a tech company, exist to bring a solution, the tech solution, because like we very interested in this thing developing, and like you know, it's really helpful. We already have a lot of examples, and we was not public for 1 year just to make a model works, and we cooperated with different institutions in Ukraine. However, now we become public and we see advantage of this thing. For example, if you're a fact checker or journalist and you find a thread, and you in a minute can spread the information in every other actors, it's when the reaction can make. When you make, I don't know, investigation, report, and you bring it in the media in 1 month, it's almost nothing. Unfortunately, this kind of work, yeah, it can be productive for educational purpose. It can be productive in understanding what's standing behind the information attacks. But in a month, it will be 10,000, maybe million other attacks. And I'm talking about Russia. If we will speak about China, it will be other things. So it's spread, it's have other components, but it will also, especially in context of US and how US thinking about the China also have influence, especially when we're speaking about different platforms and different these narratives. And unfortunately, these things which I've started about, it's not about facts or truth. We can bring a lot of facts, but people can believe in some facts, they can not believe in some facts, they can express emotions in different ways. And for example, emotions, it's also very helpful to understand. For example, we made a few investigations before like so-called Ukrainian counteroffensive starts, how people, what they think in occupied territories, what they think about counteroffensive, future counteroffensive in Ukraine. But they can't put it in the right words. They can't say, oh, I support counteroffensive, or I can't support. So the technology which stands behind, like which we develop, we can identify what person emotions. It's also very helpful. So I'm not like such kind of person who say that all this technology working only in a bad manner. It's also working in a good manner. Because, for example, when you're in occupation, you can't say I support Ukraine 100%, because like this person with his name, surname can be identified easily and can be punished by like these terrorists who they are, who occupied this territory. So, but in other words, he can put an emotions which he spread about can be written by us, and it will be analyzed, and we will also understand what it means. Like not we, like the people who making decisions. So it's also like games from two sides.
Yeah, I agree with this. No, I have some thoughts on this. It's something you said that information now it's a weapon, and that's a very, very powerful statement, and I cannot agree more. You told me yesterday that you started doing this project because you want to help soldiers, you know, and that was your motivation behind it, and it is weapon, and it's a very powerful weapon, you know. When you think about person, like people say you are what you eat, right? So if you eat bad stuff, your body basically gets sick or you die. And I think like you should say like you are what you think, because when you get your information from the polluted sources, your brain has a terrible, in factual vision of the world, which could be damaging, as we saw in January 6 or misinformation about the Ukraine war. And I think it's extremely important for governments to regulate misinformation, information actually, as they regulate health, as they regulate food. You know, like when I buy food, when I buy cheese in Rzeszów, I know exactly what's inside. When I buy water, I know it's safe to drink. But when I get a Facebook post, I have no idea. I mean, you can know because you're a detective. But maybe government should use tools like yours and punish people who pollute our minds and our information. I think that should be done. One of the thought I've heard last weeks in the US was that the cheapest way for Putin to win the war in Ukraine is to elect Donald Trump as president, because and he did that before, and he did invest a lot of Russians invested a lot of in Facebook ads, and they really helped Donald Trump to win elections against Hillary Clinton. I remember my friends, my parents' friends. They were talking about Hillary being a robot, you know, being like dead for hours, and they got this information from Facebook, right? So I think it should be punishable, and especially that Facebook and all this big social media, they make money out of it, because the more people like those posts, the more they share, the more money they make, and I think it should be regulated. I don't, Kamila, do you have some thoughts on this?
I'm just stuck with what you said, that our minds get polluted, and I think it resonates a lot with me, and I think there is a limit to what we can take. And if I put that into the context that we operate in a response setting where people are just overloaded, stretched, and at their limits, then the information that is, you know, like polluting is an additional burden and threat. I think we're trying to be very mindful that the information is relevant to the right audience, that it's targeted, that it brings value, that it really helps. It's not, you know, it's not marketing. It's helpful. It's help. Yeah. So these were sort of my thoughts in response to your reflection. Yeah. But also, right now I'm reminded because I was thinking about going viral but also like I'm thinking about how relevant this information must be, but also like what we want to achieve with different things. And I'm thinking about going viral and sometimes how helpful that is of going viral. And I don't know if we will have the time. You will tell me, Alek. You're the master.
We have time. Yeah, we have time.
But you know, I have prepared a surprise for our audience, which is basically a very short movie. It's 1.5 minute movie from Save the Children. Which I want to share with you and show you, and this movie has gone viral. It had more than 75 million views on YouTube and follow-up, so it was extremely impactful, and yeah, I want to share it with you and perhaps then comment later.
Can we play the movie?
I hope it works.
Happy birthday to you.
Make a wish. Granny.
Have you done your homework?
Adam.
Ready or not? Here it comes.
On and clashes with Britain.
Deserve to get shot.
Air strikes on rebel position.
We are going to stay.
Heavy fighting in Richmond. Rebel forces advance.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, so whenever I see this movie, I get really emotional. It's and I guess that's the reason why it was viewed for so many million times. And I don't know if you have been able to see it clearly because of the lights. The contrast wasn't perhaps that intense, but the movie was showing a year in a life of a girl from birthday to birthday. And you might have also noticed that there was no donation campaign behind it. It was just purely showing the impact on a life of a child that devastating events have, like in a very, very powerful way, giving us this very quick sort of, pictures that ultimately form the experiences of a child. Yeah. So this is an example of how going viral is a good thing, that we can actually use it to help others if we do it in the right way. And also in our whole conversation, I'm pretty much coming back to the collaboration. And I think one of the last things that I want to mention is that leaders need other leaders. Leaders need to stand on the shoulders of other leaders sometimes, and leaders need support. All of us need support. I hardly think we can be impactful alone. And if media and communication can be helpful in terms of tools and narratives, that's just wonderful. But ultimately, I think in the whole media and communication discussion and disinformation, sometimes the human face, and I guess that's why I wanted to share this video with you. It's the human face that ultimately really moves our hearts.
Yes, it's very, very powerful. Kateryna, is there anything you want to add to our previous discussion, because we're talking here?
Yes, I'm like 1 week ago, we have big discussion in George Washington University about, what people in the United States think about election. And one of the main threats which Americans saw by this research, it was disinformation. But what is interesting that it's how Americans inside America see fight with disinformation. So it was 2 options. So first option, was I'm sorry, I have 3 kids and they started to organize the school. So first option, it was regulation of disinformation, and second, it was information campaign, but with freedom of speech. And Americans said that we still want to have freedom of speech. So you must fight with disinformation, some other types of fight. So it can be plenty of types. It can be financing of press, like BBC did in one period of their history. It can be work on informational reports, when you disclose how it works and it's not work anymore. It's like on elections, when all people understand what is the trick, it's not work anymore. So it's very important to give these reports not only to think tanks and to several smart people in government, but to share these reports with all influencers, which can be useful. So if famous singer can show how Russian disinformation works with his network, it will be much more useful than only do it in academical discussion, even in the best universities. So that's why my main point that if we want to fight that, we can't use Chinese or Iran or Russian methods. We can't fight with disinformation with some, authoritarian reputation tool. So it's very important that if we build democracy, we must use democracy tools. It's like on elections. So people who use democratic message and democratic tool, they became good governor. People who use bribe and oppression and administration resource became dictators. So, your mindset, your votes and your tools also dictate your method and your future. So it's pretty important, and it's pretty important that today Ukraine show best practices, and every Ukrainian and every supporter of Ukraine shows its best practices. And thank you all you doing that, and thank you to people who create this video. It's really very good tool, it's powerful, it's emotional, and I don't hear any water or music because it was muted for me, but anyway, it was read also by impression, so it's great work, and thank you to people who create it.
Thank you. Okay, we have still a couple of minutes. Let's ask our audience, do you have any questions to our leaders? Can we pass the microphones, please? You can ask your question, you can choose your expert, or you can ask me, I can allocate a question for you. It's a freedom, let's use our freedom. Or maybe you have some thoughts and comment, maybe you disagree with us, which is also very good.
Thank you. My question is probably meant to Yevgeny. Actually, thank you for your presentation and for the work you are doing. It's amazing, and I have just researched your website, and it looks really great. And I'm reading that you are working in civil society and security issues. So my question is not specifically about disinformation, but about other online attacks that may happen these days. And so specifically, are you dealing with, for example, human trafficking or online sexual exploitation of children, of adults, with those types of attacks? And if yes, what kind of instrument do you have for that?
Actually, how to say, we not researchers itself. We do some part of research, we do some part of background or investigation or something like that. But our vision is that we are a self-guided platform, which we just providing access to the people who work with some things, and they doing. We giving them access to this big data and big charts and world of comments, videos, and other type of content, and they investigate whatever they want in their own way. We just need to be sure that it's made in a good proposal. That's why we have a selection procedures to select organizations which work with on our platform. But in general, it's work in such way. So if you want to cooperate, we will be happy if you're doing something good. It's because mostly our platform was utilized by people who work with disinformation. However, we just talked yesterday with a few people here, and they told that if you have access, for example, to some messages in the chat or in the education on the occupied territories or the discussions privately. So we unfortunately or successfully can't identify the exact person who write it or something like that, but we can identify the region or other things which appears in media, and it will be not news, which is very, how to say, moderated content, but not moderated content like comments or videos or photos and this is so.
Thank you very much. Can we ask another question?
Thank you very much for your
presentation, for your discussion, and in continue with a topic about regulation. I want to ask about regulation for safe children in social media, because it is democratic practices to make children safe, but it needs regulation. What you can say about it? I'm from Ukraine and I'm media psychologist. We study this problem in Ukraine and in Poland just now in Institute of Psychology of Polish Academy of Science, because it is very, very actual for the situation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's a great question. And actually, I'm very proud to say that Save the Children is a pioneer in protecting children, also in the media. One of the examples that I can give is that we protect children's identities. And so yes, we have our regulations and we have our policies, but foremost, we don't want to expose children. That's one of the things. Never expose children to any sort of discomfort or being in a situation where they would be even an interview situation, or being questioned by adults. The process itself before we come into the sort of publication of identity, etc., is like a very, very protected process, like engaging with children. And I think my colleague here from Save the Children could speak also very, very, very detailed about it. But then there's also the question of informed consent. And when we speak about minors, about children that are underaged, of course we cannot make decisions on their behalf. We need to have consent of the parents. It needs to be announced. Then the process has to be very secure so the children don't face a lot of distress or feel they cannot, or they're afraid to say, no, actually I would not like to participate in that. And ultimately, of course, there are whole safeguarding policies as well. Like, we would never disclose identities that are vulnerable, of people who seek refuge, who might be at risk of being identified, for people who have escaped from danger and they might be sort of found or connected to some location. So actually, we are very, very mindful about security, identity, and informed consent. And at the same time, there was one more thing that I did want to mention. Yeah, but now it's gone. But I think I covered the most things.
Yeah, very quick answer, and if it's possible. So it's very hard to understand that nowadays, like, the access, it's not providing. How to say, the access, regulation of access, it's not the regulation of what will be outcome of this. For example, when the war started, Russian spread the narrative in general, like general narrative was so that we Russians, it's nothing bad that we invaded Ukraine. So the general narrative was so. It was put in different things, and for example, with Russian children and also Ukrainian, they launched the song which called "I'm Russian," and it was spread through Likey social. I don't think nobody heard about this social network, but it's a social network for people who like 13 and younger. So it's like it's very. It's even for users of TikTok. It's very network for very, very young people, because so. And then in this social network, this song was spread by children, because they was make a video and something like that. And this is, I guess, the answer of this. What should we regulate in this case? Because, for example, yeah, we can prohibit the access of this particular song or this particular network in other parts of the world, but again, in Russia, it's used in supporting narrative. So that's why the regulation itself, it's not the answer what will be going on. Because if we will, for example, ban Telegram today, the disinformation, or the narratives will spread in other networks, and this is a huge issue. Because
I agree, but basically, to short answer your question, we don't sell alcohol to kids, we don't sell cigarettes to kids, and there are parts of internet that should not be available for kids. It should be regulated by government or governments. So that's to answer. And we will not stop, we will not safeguard kids from the internet at all, but we have to regulate the parts of internet. Let's have one more question, very, very quick. Go on.
Dominic Courage from the Humanitarian Leadership Academy. So a question not for Kamila, because I'll ask her afterwards. But one of the leadership challenges of the future is, or of today, is how do leaders collaborate on big problems? And Kamila mentioned the humanitarian exchange, where we're trying to set up a platform for that kind of collaboration. So in the context of empowering civil society in humanitarian context, what grand coalition or grand collaboration would you like to see in order to address that? So just for example, we're talking to the Global Business Blockchain Council. There is no system for tracking donations or donor money through the humanitarian system. So they are bringing together a group of people to solve that problem so that there is a transparent, safe way for that information to be shared. I wonder if you have any ideas of what problems could be solved through good collaboration.
That was for Kamila? Oh.
Anyone like Kamila?
I guess I will repeat what our vision and where we moving in general. For example, your NGO or you fact checker or you government or you something like any institution work with information or in information environment. It doesn't even matter if you focused on disinformation specifically or you just want to message outside, something outside. And unfortunately, now even between government agencies, there is no standard how they send the data itself. Because we do not talk about here a specific message like, oh look, it was some post in some social network. It's a really big data, it's really big reports which combine different aspects of different messaging from different platforms and something like that. However, it's no format even between different organizations in one country. No country. Even, I don't know, we will speak about any most developed country. So they're sending each other Excel files, PowerPoint presentations, other things, and then we will talk about, I don't know, different countries which collaborate on same issue. For example, I don't know, this grain discussion between Poland and Ukraine. It's totally Russians there, but how the Polish institution and Ukrainian institution can change the information between each other? It's doesn't exist, like put in the same way. What we are doing and how we do it, we have a format, and it's like structured format where all these organizations inside our platform just sending this information in a minute. They just identify some thread, and in a minute it's come to other agency or spread again different institutions, and the same NGOs, top fact checkers, journalists, other organizations should be there. So it's a global thing because like disinformation attack, it's really a huge issue and it can't be solved by one or two institutions in one country. It's totally the big and huge collaboration of different agencies, different organizations, donors and something like that. So I see the solution in such way. It's in the perspective, but we totally in the process of it. So it somehow will be, it can be this way, but maybe something other will be.
Okay, I know you're very, very hungry, and we stop you from...
Can I add 20 seconds?
Go on, Kateryna.
So about kids, I think that it's also big challenge for education today to give information higiene also as algorithm of thinking. It's the same as a basic understanding of I don't know, financial planning. Because as you remember, in Soviet Union also people know very good physics or mathematics, but they don't know how to collaborate, how to create content, or how to do advocacy, or how to understand what is, reliable source and what is not. So it's also very interesting tool for all of us to teach our kids, even to do government program, to just give to them tool to understand where it's reliable source and where is not. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just to summarize, the misinformation is not going anywhere. It will be more and more of it, and we have to learn to deal with this. And the answer, according to our expert, is critical thinking and education, educate yourself, and engagement. And educate yourself, educate your parents, your children, your friends, and your workers, and be critical with what you consume. I will leave you with this, and vote. Choose the right people to make. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your patience.